Hi, from snowy Netherlands. In my previous video I showed you a clip where Dr. William Lane Craig talked about Richard Dawkins. Don't forget, Dr. Craig is a professional philosopher using logic and rigorous thinking.
As a professional philosopher,
there were two instances where the charitable nature of Dr. Craig in an intellectual sense was demonstrated. But I pointed out only one such instance in that clip. That was that by William Lane Craig's logic, the sentence, if God exists, means God exists. And then using Dr. Craig's own logic, we saw that he himself refutes his own arguments for the existence of God. But there was one more instance in that clip which again serves to show the charitable nature in an intellectual sense of Dr. Craig, and that was
Richard Dawkins. He doesn't dispute either premise of the Kalam cosmological argument.
His demonstration that when Richard Dawkins does not deal with the premises of his simple Kalam cosmological argument, that means that Richard Dawkins shows a tacit admission that this argument is right, that these premises are correct. Using this same logic, tacit admission, I will show you another instance in which William Lane Craig refutes his own argument for the existence of God. We can safely assume that Richard Dawkins has heard of the simple Kalam cosmological argument, and yet he does not debate, he does not dispute its two premises. It can be safely assumed that when Dr. William Lane Craig, the professional philosopher, famous, speaking to large audiences and getting money for that, when Dr. Craig quotes an author and from his book, that he would have read this book.
For if there is no God, then man's life becomes ultimately absurd. It is without ultimate meaning, without ultimate value, without ultimate purpose. The contributions of the scientist to the advance of human knowledge, the efforts of the doctor to alleviate pain and suffering, the efforts of the diplomat to secure peace in the world, the sacrifices of good people everywhere to better the lot of the human race. In the end, all of these come to nothing. The French biochemist Jacques Monod seemed to echo these sentiments when he wrote in his work, Chance and Necessity, "Man finally knows that he is alone in the indifferent immensity of the universe."
In several of his lectures, Dr. Craig quoted from a book by the famous French biologist and Nobel laureate Jacques Monod, from his book Chance and Necessity. And this book has a subtitle, An Essay on the Natural Philosophy of Modern Biology. So it is in line with William Lane Craig's profession, philosophy. So we can safely assume that Dr. Craig has read this book. Otherwise, we would be saying that he is cheating if he hasn't read the book and just has taken one short quotation in support of his own assertions. No, that would be cheating. And you can't expect that from a famous professional philosopher speaking in front of big audiences and getting money for that. You can't accuse such a person in cheating.
The French biochemist Jacques Monod seemed to echo these sentiments when he wrote in his work Chance and Necessity.
So, Dr. Craig is well acquainted with and has read Jacques Monod's book Chance and Necessity, yet he only takes a short quotation from the book and uses it in support of his assertion. he does not dispute any of the arguments for naturalism and against a designer that Jacques Monod demonstrates in that book of natural philosophy, of modern biology. That means that Dr. Craig tacitly admits that Jacques Monod is correct. Let me describe to you in short the arguments that Jacques Monod uses in this book that is an essay on the natural philosophy of modern biology, with which, don't forget, Dr. Craig completely agrees. He shows the tacit admission of the truth of those arguments. It would be better if you read the book for yourself, but I will make a short review of the arguments. One is, science is based on the principle of objectivity. Not only it studies the objectively existing physical world, but anybody in principle could make the same experiments and could reach the same conclusions. So in that respect as well, science is objective. And any other way of knowing the truth about the world is suspect because it is subjective, or at least has subjective elements. The other argument is that, having in mind the fundamental physical laws, one can presuppose that a certain class of physical objects will appear in the universe, like stars, planets, moons, but there is one class of objects that cannot be presupposed from the basic physical laws. They are allowed by these fundamental physical laws, but they cannot be presupposed from them. So that phenomena is a chance phenomena, and that is life. Abiogenesis is a chance chemical event. And Jacques Monod makes a parallel with crystallization of various substances, but that happens at a very much simpler level than abiogenesis, than the multiplication of living organisms. Another argument that Jacques Monod gives about living objects, that is that from the beginning, living objects have a sort of directedness, a sort of purpose, a sort of function, and that is self-preservation and multiplication. And that he calls the principle of teleonomy, teleonomic principle. Only living beings have this teleonomy. That is purpose, function, some kind of a goal. And that is multiplication, of course. Jacques Monod discovers two fundamental principles in life. And those are, one is reproductive invariance, and the other is teleonomic principle, teleonomy. Invariance, that means that living beings reproduce themselves in the same shape or form or structure. And teleonomy means that from the beginning, in living objects, there is always some kind of directedness, purpose, function, and that is self-preservation and multiplication. So this is what directs the evolution of living beings in the future. Because living beings reproduce themselves invariantly in exactly the same structure, sometimes in the copying of the DNA, mistakes happen. And those are completely chance mistakes, random mistakes, probably due to quantum perturbations. But these small mistakes, and those are mutations, are expressed in an unpredictable manner in the future organism. This is one line of events. Another line of events, that is natural circumstances which change as well. When they meet together, necessity takes over, and that is natural selection. then mutations that are bad for the organism are eliminated, and those mutations, the alterations in organisms that are preserved, are profitable for the organism, and they are always some kind of an improvement in the function of the organism. So gradually, with many such mutations and alterations in the organism is, future organisms are changed, are improved, their function, their purpose for self-preservation and reproduction is improved. So in this way, when a very complex organism, that is the human species, evolved, it already has the sense of meaning for its life, purpose for the future, value of one's life. All these arguments demonstrate the impossibility of an intelligent designer, because it demonstrates the natural processes that lead to the complex information contained in human beings and in other living beings at present. Don't forget, Dr. Craig shows tacit admission. He does not dispute these arguments. He agrees with their truth. In this way, Dr. Craig shows a charitability in an intellectual sense, and he disproves his own arguments when he talks about design or an intelligent designer or God. Bye.